all the people that thought COVID was this big evil conspiracy might have just been vindicated, because Tulsi Gabbard, all right, she basically is, one of the higher up people in the government for the last few years. She's the outgoing director of national intelligence, and it seems like right at the end of her job, as she's about to hang it up. All right, I don't know what they have. I don't know what directors of national intelligence hang up. Maybe a magnifying glass or, some kind of spyware. But on the very last day, she has apparently dumped a whole bunch of files and evidence to basically, in her opinion, prove that there was a giant conspiracy going on with COVID. And she's basically snitching on Dr. Fauci, the guy that was basically in charge of all American health. All right, he was basically, he was in, I don't know what his position was, but he was basically just the top healthcare advisor in the government at the time of COVID, and she's basically completely exposed him and snitched on him, and a lot of people are feeling like this is now truth that they were looking for, that this was one big conspiracy. So I'm going to show you everything that's been put out there, okay? I'm not trying to give my personal opinion. I don't really have any personal opinions. I think just the whole 2020 situation was just insane, okay? It was just insane. And if you ask me, I think this is going to sound crazy, but in my opinion, I think hospitals should have just said, look, we're not treating COVID. We'll treat everything else as usual. We're going to keep all the things going, but this COVID thing, we don't know. We can't deal with that. We don't know what to do with that. And you're just going to have to be on your own with that one. All right. We can't allow everybody, we can't allow healthcare and the whole country to fall apart to try and sort out this new thing we don't understand. I don't know. That's why I'm not in charge of things. But apparently, okay, this is what's going on. So she posted this. She said, today, I'm releasing never-before-seen intelligence, revealing new evidence of past US government funding for more than 120 biolabs in over 30 countries, including Ukraine, in support of President Trump's executive order to end federal funding of dangerous gain-of-function research all around the world and increase transparency and accountability. ODNI will continue working with partners across the administration to identify where these labs are, what pathogens they contain, and what research is being conducted. Here's what she said. All right, this is insane.
Searching through intelligence community holdings and files, today I'm releasing new evidence of long-standing U.S. government funding of more than 120 biolabs in over 30 countries. Now, these biolabs include labs in places like Ukraine, which could be at risk of compromise due to the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. In fact, the intelligence community had previously warned that a U.S.-funded biolab in Ukraine likely housed dangerous pathogens and remained vulnerable to long-standing threats of Russian attack, seizure, or damage. Now, until now, evidence regarding the full existence and funding of these laboratories had been knowingly withheld from you, the American people. Many of these U.S. government-funded biolabs are currently or have previously engaged in research using hazardous and highly contagious pathogens, and in some cases included dangerous gain-of-function research with very little visibility or oversight. Now, President Trump clearly understands the serious threat dangerous gain-of-function research poses to the American people. And this is why he took decisive action over a year ago. On May 25th, 2025, he signed an executive order to end federal funding of gain-of-function research around the world. Here at ODNI, I issued new guidance to the intelligence community directing increased collection on these laboratories and facilities overseas. And we're already seeing the results of this increased collection. We're learning new details, for example, on clinical trials that are underway at these facilities and that are raising significant ethical, financial, and security concerns regarding the supposed public health initiatives and U.S. national security. Now, despite the obvious potential for catastrophic global impact that research on dangerous pathogens in biolabs can have, politicians and so-called health professionals like Dr. Fauci, as well as entities within the Biden administration's national security team, lied repeatedly to the American people about the existence of U.S.-funded and supported biolabs. Not only did they lie, they threatened those who attempted to expose the truth. So this release today.
So this was actually just over a week ago. My bad. So she released this about a week ago. Okay. But then on her final day in office, she popped out again with another glossy looking video. And this time, this is when she went full snitch mode on Dr. Anthony Fauci and basically told the world for the first time that he had apparently completely lied about COVID. So this is what she put out there. She said, "Today, on my final day as Director of National Intelligence, I'm releasing never-before-seen communications and documents exposing how Dr. Fauci provided millions in taxpayer US dollars to fund dangerous gain-of-function research at the Wuhan lab, worked with politicized elements within the intelligence community to suppress the truth about his actions and hide the virus's lab leak origins, and lied to Congress while under oath of 2024. It's time you know the truth." She's on her Draco shit. Yeah, we know the truth.
Before the COVID pandemic, Dr. Fauci, as head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, provided millions in U.S. taxpayer dollars to fund dangerous gain-of-function research on bat coronaviruses at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, work which is now widely viewed as the source of the unintentional lab leak that sparked the pandemic. Now, in support of President Trump's maximum transparency mandate, today, on my final day as Director of National Intelligence, I'm releasing never-before-seen communications and documents that expose exactly how Fauci worked with politicized career leadership in the intelligence community to suppress the truth about his actions, the virus's lab leak origins, and his role in directing U.S. funding for this dangerous research that caused immeasurable harm and countless lost lives. Now, these documents expose Fauci's direct role in influencing and manipulating IC assessments on COVID-19 and how Fauci lied to Congress in 2024 when, under oath, he denied knowledge of or participation in discussions with intelligence officials about viral research. We also received testimony from multiple intelligence community whistleblowers who reported retaliation for challenging the intelligence community's manipulation of intelligence on the virus's origins, once again revealing a clear pattern of suppressing dissent, silencing critics, and burying the truth. Dr. Fauci's close relationships with the intelligence community enabled him to assume three key roles that shield him from scrutiny. First, Dr. Fauci funded dangerous gain-of-function coronavirus research linked to Big Pharma and their pursuit of universal vaccines worth trillions of dollars. Second, Dr. Fauci was the behind-the-scenes advisor who, alongside his hand-picked so-called experts, pushed the intelligence community to endorse a natural animal origin to hide his dangerous gain-of-function research that he funded using taxpayer dollars, all of this in a deliberate attempt to cover up the truth and shift the blame and attention away from Fauci's own actions. Third, Dr. Fauci became the nation's pandemic pundit, and he publicly pushed lies, disinformation, and censorship using every platform available.
So she's basically saying he funded and participated in this gain-of-function research, and that's where it came from. And then he used his position of power leading healthcare in America and his connections in the intelligence agencies to cover up and censor anybody saying otherwise. And there was a lot of censorship. You couldn't even say COVID back then. You couldn't even say on YouTube. You couldn't come on YouTube and give your opinion about it without being shut down. People getting fully demonetized for it. Now, some people have been pushing back on Gabbard's expose and this whole biolabs theory. So I'm going to read you another article, okay, that kind of talks about her initial comments about a week ago. And they're saying that she's actually doing favors for the Russians, all right? So I'm going to read you this and give you another, a little bit of backstory. So it says, last week, outgoing Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard gave the Kremlin an invaluable gift by releasing what she called new intelligence on US-funded biological laboratories overseas. She said information about these labs was intentionally covered up and by powerful people. Then she cited publicly available information, and her map of Ukraine's biolabs incorrectly placed Kyiv in the south and either misspelled or invented a city called Cherniv. Real US intelligence products are simply not this stupid. Do you think she used AI? Do you think she used AI? She probably used some AI on that. That's probably why. Because AI doesn't have a fucking clue what's going on. Even Laura Loomer called out Gabbard's action as a conflation of biological safety work being done to prevent the dangerous uses of Soviet-era pathogens with bioweapons production so that Russia has another manufactured excuse to continue its prolonged war with Ukraine. And she showed with screenshots how Gabbard passed off Russian intelligence products as American. I spoke with Greg Koblenz, a bioweapons expert who leads George Mason University's biodefense graduate program, He said, this really is kind of a dream outcome for the Kremlin because they've been pushing this false narrative for several years, he told me. They've been having a field day with it. Pretty much every major state-owned Russian news outlet has run stories about DNI Gabbard validating the allegations that Russians have been making all these years about nefarious, suspicious activities going on in these US-funded laboratories in Ukraine. So already this has become a major loss to US credibility and to push back on this disinformation. He believes that Gabbard's release ultimately undermines the US ability to build international support to confront Moscow over its violations of the Biological Weapons Convention. We walked through some of the ironies at play here. For one, it was Gabbard who last year dismantled the ODNI's National Counter-Proliferation and Biosecurity Center, stating that taking action to address global health issues falls well outside ODNI's core mission. Greg said, we lost a real important focal point for this kind of research analysis, and that has really set us back in terms of being able to properly calibrate our threat assessments. Second, Gabbard vowed to check her viewpoints at ODNI's doorstep during her confirmation hearing last year, but this release echoed remarks she made in 2022 about the 25-plus biological labs in Ukraine's war zone. Even then, she was accused of parroting the stream of Russian disinformation about US-funded bioweapons and biolabs in Ukraine. Third, Greg described how Russia should be our top concern in the bioweapons space. The country inherited the Soviet biological weapons program, which was the largest program of its kind in the world. He said that the Russians have maintained at least 3 top-secret military facilities involved in their offensive biological weapons program. They've been actually modernizing their biological weapons program and their chemical weapons program for the last several years, he said. They even started building a new BSL-4 lab, the highest level of biological containment, at the Sergeyev Posad site after launching their full-scale invasion of Ukraine. We also spoke about GRU Unit 29155, the hit squad behind a slew of poisonings which repeatedly created the biolab disinformation theme. And fourth, there's been a recent and notable development regarding chemical weapons used in Syria, where Gabbard flew and met with Bashar al-Assad in 2017, before Assad flew to Moscow and fled, of course, but Gabbard just couldn't believe that Assad had used chemical weapons on his own people. Earlier this month, Greg said the Syrians uncovered the stockpile of chemical weapons that the Assad regime had been hiding from the Organization for Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. And this stockpile included chemical bombs, precursors for the nerve agent sarin, including hexamine, which is a key stabilizer the Syrians used, but the denialists claimed that it was not part of the program, including mixing equipment to actually mix these chemicals into bombs that would use them. So pretty much everything a dictator needs to gas his people was found. Paid subscribers who truly make my reporting possible can scroll down and watch us go deeper. We're not going to do that, but shout out to Sasha Ingber and Greg Koblenz. So they're trying to say, no, she's basically handing the Russians just the narrative that they want on a platter. But here's the thing. All right. In the case of the origin of the coronavirus, all right, the Wuhan Institute of Virology is located in the very same city where the COVID outbreak first emerged. And the lab housed a large collection of coronavirus samples before the world had even heard about coronavirus. And I'm not going to lie to you, this is just my opinion, but it did seem it's a little bit too suspicious that there was a lab working on this stuff in Wuhan and they just want to say, just so happened to come from the same place and it was an animal. I don't know.
This one right here. The Wuhan Institute of Virology.
So here's what's crazy. It's exactly in this specific lab in Wuhan where scientists have been experimenting for years with coronaviruses, engineering them to make them even more infectious to human beings.
More infectious to humans? Whoa. By the way, that's Podgy. He's one of my producers. He reached out to me a while back and said that we should look into the alternative hypotheses of where COVID came from, including this idea that it may have leaked from this lab. At the time, I was quite skeptical. I had heard rumblings about the idea of a lab accident that caused COVID, and I'd sort of written it off because it just seemed so conspiracy, just like low-hanging fruit conspiracy, like super engineered virus escapes from lab and starts global pandemic. It's like New World Order. It just reeks of like internet conspiracy and disinformation. And in addition to that, the only people who were touting this were like people who are not very good at the truth and people who also liked to pick fights with China.
I can tell you that there is a significant amount of evidence that this came from that laboratory in Wuhan.
But I told Podgy that if there's any evidence...
So basically, okay, there are apparently documented concerns about this lab before the pandemic even happened, all right? So he talks about it here. Shout out to Johnny Harris. Basically, people were worried about the facility safety standards and the lack of properly trained technicians.
2017, there was someone who did care. It was someone at the US Embassy in Beijing. They caught wind that in this Wuhan lab, they were curating coronaviruses and engineering more infectious ones. This wasn't some secret. This was like in collaboration with scientists in the US and around the world. But even still, they sent a team of health experts to check out the lab. And what they saw troubled them. The lab wasn't nearly as safe as it needed to be. And the managers at the lab said that they were lobbying for more resources so that they could hire properly trained technicians to safely run the lab. The diplomats were concerned and they sent 2 messages back to Washington, D.C. at 2 different periods of time. They said this lab isn't safe and the State Department should work with the Chinese to tighten security. These 2 cables went back to Washington, D.C. and both were ignored. Again, this was like super boring stuff in 2017 and 2018. No one had heard of Anthony Fauci. This wasn't top priority. So it was ignored until 2020, when suddenly we all care about virology.
Concerns about the deadly coronavirus officially hitting the U.S.
So media basically reported that 3 Wuhan lab researchers were actually hospitalized with COVID-like symptoms all the way back in November 2019, right before the pandemic became official and just screwed up the whole world.
Instead, we have to rely on US spies and intel to piece this together. The Wall Street Journal recently reported that there was intel that said that 3 researchers at the Wuhan lab got sick with COVID-like symptoms, and they had to be hospitalized in November 2019, weeks before the first official case of COVID. Again,
I don't need to hear any more than that, to be honest. That's just use. For me, it's just common sense. They had it first. They worked at the COVID lab.
This isn't proof, but it's definitely reason to ask more questions. China, stop making us rely on intel from spies. Put the hypothesis to bed and let us investigate. But they won't, which is incredibly suspicious.
Mike, at the end of the day, it's profoundly in China's interest to do this as well, because look, it suffered too.
Okay, so that's the lab leak hypothesis. Unsafe lab that's the coronavirus epicenter, and it engineers viruses to be more infectious for humans, has a little mishap, which turns into a global pandemic. It
just seems like common sense to me, okay? But here's where Fauci gets involved, right? So the connection to Fauci, it basically comes through this thing called the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, the NIAID. And this is the agency that he led, and it approved federal grants to an organization called the EcoHealth Alliance. Now, the EcoHealth Alliance basically helped fund the coronavirus research that was connected to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, where this all started, where people was catching COVID in November 2019 before in December 2019 people decided COVID-19 was a thing. So it all started in 2019. So the NIH was a major funder, along with the National Science Foundation of China, the NSFC, of SARS research by the Wuhan Institute of Virology, okay, Shi Zheng Li and QG. The researchers spent 5 years of investigation and genome sequencing to show that a population of bats in a cave in Yunnan province harbored a virus with all the building blocks of SARS. This lends weight to the theory that SARS originated in bat populations before first jumping to civet cats, likely bat feces, then to humans, after people transported the civet cats from Yunnan to Guangdong province animal markets. The results were published late last year. She said that U.S. scientist Peter Danzak, a leading expert on emerging diseases and president of the New York-based EcoHealth Alliance, was a strong partner. Danzak's team provided support in statistical modeling to assess the risk of more coronaviruses like SARS crossing over to human populations. So y'all was all looking into this, right, before we all find out what was going on, okay? And then, as you can see here, this is just this is just the proof, basically, project title. This is the project that looked into this. Understanding the risk of bat coronavirus emergence, right? Reporting the project granted, all right, in June the 1st, 2014 up to May 31st, 2019. It went up to it all went up to the mid 2019. Yeah, you did all this research in mid 20. Okay. Reporting period, June the 1st, 2018 up to the end of May 2019. Requested budget period. They got budget. They got money. Peter Daszak, he's the program director. The recipient organization was the EcoHealth Alliance. All right. It's all there. Human subjects. Yes. All right. This is what you call evidence. All right. So here's the list of scientists participating in the project that included researchers from Wuhan, China. Okay. As you can see, these are kind of some of the names. that were involved. Basically, these are the Chinese scientists from Wuhan Institute of Virology, as you can see here. I don't know if my mouse has disappeared all of a sudden, but hang on. My cursor disappeared. I want to point things out to you. As you can see, Wuhan Institute of Virology. What individuals worked on the project? Peter Daszak, right? He the mastermind. Center for Disease. Then you got all these Chinese folks and these are co-investigators. No Martin Ross, all right? Zhengli Shi, Qingyi Ji, all right? Epstein. Excuse me? Excuse me? We got Jonathan H. Epstein, all right? That better be a coincidence. That better be a goddamn coincidence. But obviously, as you can see here, Wuhan Institute of Virology. I'm covering it up. Underneath me, as you can see, Wuhan Institute of Virology. Let me get this back to where it was supposed to be. You know what I'm saying? Right next to me, right there. There. See that? Wuhan Institute, yeah. We know what's going on. We know the truth. So that's all going on. So we're finding out who was involved in this situation, all right? Who was cooking this thing up. And here's the thing, all right? The money that went to this, all right? Here's just proof of the money. All right, we're going to follow the money. So the money allegedly went as funding to China for research and the institution it went to. So they're saying, what is the impact or information? Nothing to report. What dollar amount of the awards budget is being spent in foreign country? $66,500 was being spent in China on this project. Okay. And then we got this, all right? Again, let me see if I can get this looking good. Foreign component, organization name, Wuhan Institute of Virology, country, China. All right. So they sent money. They sent money over there. All right. Is what it is. The money went over there. They were involved. That's where it started, it seems, in some people's opinion. So Newsweek have been also covering Gabbard's claims about Fauci in the newly released COVID origin documents. Okay. And basically, look, to me, this is just my opinion, but to me, common sense would dictate, bro, it came from this lab and it was being funded, like, by the Americans, bro. I've shown you the receipts. Like, this is just, I don't know why I'm the one that has to break this to you, but, it's been touted around there for a while. But it says, Tulsi Gabbard drops documents she says relate to COVID and Fauci. View them in full. All right, you've already seen them. But it says, outgoing director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, released what she described as previously unseen communications and documents related to the origins of COVID-19 research funding and the alleged actions of Dr. Anthony Fauci. The documents released late Thursday are part of what the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, ODNI, described as a year-long declassification review, including internal communications, whistleblower allegations, and intelligence-related material tied to debates over how the coronavirus pandemic began. Gabbard alleged that the records demonstrate connections between US-funded research and the Wuhan Institute of Virology and efforts within government to shape public understanding of the virus's origins. She also alleged that Fauci lied to Congress while under oath in 2024. All right, Newsweek attempted to contact Fauci via Georgetown Global Health Institute Thursday night for a comment. I'd like to know what Fauci's got to say about this, right? The release of documents is the latest step in the current administration's broader effort to revisit decisions made during the pandemic and scrutinize intelligence and scientific processes. It also comes as Gabbard prepares to leave government after announcing she'd stepped down as the Director of National Intelligence, with President Donald Trump appointing Bill Pult as the acting director. Here's what the documents claim. In a statement accompanying the release, Gabbard said the COVID-19 pandemic caused tremendous hardship and pain for millions of our fellow Americans. If we can get this out of here. Our fellow Americans, and for countless people around the world. After years of lies, censorship, and cover-ups, the American people deserve transparency, truth, and accountability. She added the tactics used to hide the truth are straight from the deep state playbook. Politicized, self-serving leaders like Dr. Fauci covered up their own wrongdoing and abuses of power, manipulated intelligence, lied to Congress, and undermined a duly elected president. According to the ODNI release, the documents include communications that the agency says indicate Fauci, while serving as director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, NIAID, was involved in discussions connected to intelligence reviews of COVID-19's origins. The ODNI also said intelligence personnel sought guidance from scientific experts recommended by Fauci during a U.S. government review into the pandemic's origins. The agency further alleged that Fauci maintained contact with intelligence officials during key stages of the review process and that some of the communications conflict with his 2024 congressional testimony. It's not a good look. In its statement, the ODNI said Fauci oversaw funding that supported coronavirus research involving bat viruses at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. The release also alleged this work involved gain-of-function research and described it as being widely viewed as linked to a potential lab-related origin of the pandemic. Gabbard has also claimed the documents show officials within the intelligence community suppressed dissenting views, including those supportive of a lab origin hypothesis. However, US intelligence agencies have not reached a definitive conclusion on the origins of COVID-19. We've still not reached a conclusion. Give me a fucking break, right? Give me a break. Still not reached a conclusion, bro. Still not reached it. We've seen the conclusion, bro. It's been concluded. It's been concluded, bro. Still trying to work it. We've seen November 2019 has been concluded. Whistleblower claims. According to the ODNI, the research includes whistleblower testimony alleging the intelligence analysts who expressed alternative views on the virus's origins face professional consequences. The agency said complaints included claims of marginalization, career setbacks, and pressure against dissenting opinions. The ODNI added that several of these allegations have been referred to the Intelligence Community Inspector General for review. What has Fauci said previously? Fauci, who led NIAID for decades and became one of the most visible figures in the US pandemic response, has repeatedly denied allegations that he covered up the origins of COVID-19 or misled lawmakers. During a June 2024 congressional hearing before the House Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic, Fauci rejected accusations that he lied to Congress or orchestrated a cover-up, calling such claims preposterous, according to reporting on the hearing. He also said that both a natural origin and a lab accident remain plausible scenarios for COVID, though evidence in his view leaned towards natural transmission while remaining inconclusive. Bit convenient, isn't it? The hearing did not produce definitive evidence linking Fauci to the origin of the virus following years of debate and congressional scrutiny over US-funded research that involved collaborators at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. They just don't want you to believe your eyes and ears, don't they? The new allegations came amid continued political divisions over the pandemic response and investigations into its origins. In January 2025, then-President Joe Biden issued a preemptive pardon for Fauci, along with several other officials, citing concerns they could face baselessly motivated prosecutions. Preemptive pardon. Yeah. We don't even know if he did anything wrong, but we're going to I'm going to pardon him now. And Biden emphasized at the time the pardon shouldn't be mistaken as an acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Excuse me? I'm actually just offended. Like, isn't it offensive how the people at the top, how stupid they think you are, how dumb they think. You're so dumb. The average person on the street, the pleb on the street, all right? They're so dumb. We can just play in their faces. We're just going to play in their faces, and they're just going to swallow it up and take it. Are you joking? So Fauci has remained a lightning rod for criticism among some Republicans, while supporters credit him with helping guide the US through a once-in-a-century public health crisis. What caused that crisis? So despite the sweeping claims, several key questions remain unresolved. The legal implications. It's unclear whether new evidence could lead to formal investigations or legal actions. Well, he's been preemptively pardoned, so I guess not. Verification, the documents themselves haven't yet been independently verified in full by outside experts or congressional bodies. Scientific consensus. US intelligence agencies and scientists continue to say there's no definitive proof of whether COVID-19 emerged from a lab or natural transmission. No definitive proof, apart from the fact that in November 2019, people working at the COVID lab got a mysterious virus a month before the first documented case. They think you're so stupid. They think you're a moron. They think we're idiots. They think we don't have a brain cell to rub together. The release is likely to intensify the debate over the origins of COVID-19, as well as the scrutiny of the intelligence community's role in shaping public narratives during the pandemic. The ODNI materials have not yet been independently verified in full, and further reviews by lawmakers, scientists, and experts is expected in the coming days. For now, the release adds more fuel to a debate that for more than 6 years remains unresolved. Still unresolved. What do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments. Do you think this is still unresolved? Do you think we have no... It's just, for me, it's resolved. Like, I think I've just got, like, bruh. But look, I don't want to influence anybody either which way. You tell me what you guys think. This is just a review and opinions based on what happened. And I think that now we've got to the point of free speech where we're allowed to have our opinions. Hopefully I don't get demonetized or thrown off of public platforms for even just daring to read these comments, right? Because it is shocking, and I do feel like they're playing in our faces. But hey, it just seems like there's just like you see evidence and then they're just like, that's not enough. That it's still a debate. It's still unresolved. What do you mean it's still unresolved? Sounds resolved. Sounds resolved enough to do a preemptive pardon. Why are you doing a preemptive pardon if it's unresolved? Let's resolve it and work it out, right? Before you preemptively pardon. Preemptive pardon's crazy. Let me know what you guys think. All right, I don't want to sway you either way. I've just given you a little bit of my opinion on the news that's going around, but this is mental. But it remains unresolved. It's still up for debate. All right, but he's already been pardoned, so he's already been preemptively pardoned. So no wrongdoing. It's actually insane. But anyway, I'll catch you guys in the next video. I'm going to do another video for you guys today on a very, very different topic. I'm hitting you with a whole different types of topics today, okay? So I hope you enjoy that. I'll catch you guys in the next video. And for now, I'm out, gang. Peace. Stay safe.